Welcome to the King Institute for Faith and Culture. My name is Martin Dotterweich, and I direct the King Institute. It is a great pleasure to welcome you here this morning, as it always is, but especially this morning as we welcome back Kimberly Brubaker Bradley and Katherine Paterson. I should just quit while I'm ahead. That's good. Many of you know, have experienced Katherine at one point or another. She is a King graduate. She graduated from this very campus in 1954. She's been back many times, and we're delighted to have her back yet again, all the way from Vermont. All the way from Bristol, we have Kimberly Brubaker Bradley, a fellow children's author, and the two of them have been, I think this is the fourth time we've done this now, which is great, and every time gets a little better, which I enjoy. I would spend more time introducing because they have both a lot of things to say. We could talk about the Newbery-honours and awards. We could talk about the National Book Awards, or for Katherine, the title Living Legend from the Library of Congress, which you can't get better than that. That's the top one. So there's lots of those things to talk about. There are also great stories for each. The story of the writing of Bridge to Terabithia and its long publication history, or the story of how Kimberly Brubaker Bradley started off as a pre-med student and then saw the light and moved into literature instead. But instead of those, we're going to move straight into some conversation. So this morning we'll have a conversation, and our theme is wonder. And this evening at 7 o'clock, Katherine will be at Emmanuel Episcopal Church, where she will speak about that theme as well. So if you can come again tonight, it'll be a different format. It'll just be Katherine speaking to us then. Immediately after this event, and for those of you who are visiting, please come next door to the library where we'll have a reception. We'll have some coffee and treats there, and you're very welcome to come over and spend some time with Katherine and Kim. And I think that's all my announcements. We have two more events coming up this fall. November 4th, we welcome Daniel Silliman, who is the news editor for Christianity Today magazine, and he also just published a book about the spiritual life of Richard Nixon, which is kind of a surprise. He comes the day before the election on November 4th. November 18th, we welcome Derek Sherman from Calvin University, who's going to talk about issues of AI and Christian faith, something that occupies a lot of us at the minute. So, without further ado, please welcome Katherine Paterson and Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. Okay. I am going to start off with a kind of basic question. Since your theme is wonder that you brought us, how do you define wonder?
Well, I'm going to do it at length tonight. Maybe, there are all kinds of wonder. You're wondering how this old crippled lady keeps coming back, older and more crippled and deafer every time she comes. I may not bother you again, but anyhow, I'm here now, and I'm very glad to. But, of course, what I hope everybody will be thinking of wonder as the wonder of the world we live in, the wonder of our creation, the wonder of our Creator, and all those, and the more spiritual aspects of what wonder means in our lives. Would you like to expand again?
Sure. And I'm just going to say briefly, as I keep coughing, that this is asthma. I am not contagious in any way to anyone, I promise. I swear. This has been going on for weeks. I think it's also kind of the amazement of the uncertainty of things, because I'm taking a break right now to be here and to be at a friend's wedding this weekend. But my husband and I are on a 4-month RV trip celebrating his retirement, and we were out in Yosemite 2 weeks ago and did a night sky thing with the National Park Service. And you're staring at the night sky, which is of course really incredible in Yosemite. It's a dark place. But they're talking about how far away these things really are, and how long it takes the light from these stars to get here, so that what you're actually seeing all happened in the past, in some cases millions of years ago, and it's mind-boggling, of course. Yeah. But I think sometimes in this world we want to have answers. And so we try to put all these little things in boxes and say, this is this, this is this. And the truth is, none of it is really that. I mean, it's all mind-boggling. If you really think, I mean, none of you are sitting here thinking about your pancreases right now. But your pancreases are all doing things that are really complicated and important. And we're oblivious to it. So I think that it's trying not to be oblivious.
Yeah, absolutely. The theme of my talk tonight is a quotation from Mary Oliver, which is, pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. And I think, you know, you've heard my talk for tonight, so you don't have to come.
Yes, you do.
Definitely do. There's still a bit of the medical student there with your pancreas reference, I noticed there.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I was a chemistry major in college. Yeah, I mean, science is... Okay, here's a story. I was mad because I did poorly on an exam, which was an unfair exam, and it truly was. I could get into that, but I won't. When I was a sophomore, and I stormed into my organic chemistry prof's office, and all the chemistry professors had a little private lab. And I said, give me one good reason to stay in chemistry, or I'm changing my major to psychology right now. And he looked at me, and he got up from his desk, and he went like this, and he came in, and he was kind of a biochemistry chemist. And he showed me this bunch of chemicals on his, in his lab. And he said, with the contents of that shelf, you could make a human being if only you knew how. And I said, okay, I'm in, and I left. I mean, you know, that's pretty cool.
That's good. If wonder is a thing that gives us insight into the natural world and into the functioning of our bodies and all these sorts of remarkable things, it strikes me that a particularly tricky thing to do. Wonder is something that often takes language away from us. If I'm in a moment of wonder, I'm looking at the night sky at Yosemite, or I'm thinking about my pancreas, and I don't have words for it. Both of you, your job is words. So how do you take the experience of wonder and trap that, not trap it, that's not the wrong word, and filter it into words?
Wow. I don't know. I always consider it a miracle that something I have written means something to somebody else. And I give the reader all the credit, because without the reader, nothing I do makes any difference. It's just scribbles on a page collecting dust on the shelf. It doesn't come alive until someone reads it and brings their own life experience and their own ability to read to it. So I always tell kids, and I talk in schools, I used to a lot, but I think they think I'm dead now. In fact, I got a letter. I got a letter recently, and it said, "Are you still alive?" And I thought,
Did you write back no?
no. But my book doesn't come alive without a reader, and so I live in gratitude that it works, and I'm not quite sure how, because it's a miracle. I mean, let me tell you, when I read one of Kim's books, something happens to me that doesn't happen with a lot of books. I must say, she's a wonderful writer and so imaginative. I mean, I swear, if I had half her imagination, I could write twice as well. Seriously. Read her books.
So Martin already knows he can get me to do anything by saying, and Katherine Paterson, but, you know, I didn't read your books when I was a young child, but I kind of went away from the children's section when I was all of 13 because I was very grown up, and then I wandered back in when I was about 18 because the adult books weren't doing it for me, and read The Great Gilly Hopkins. And I always, that was one of the books that just sort of shocked me into thinking about children's literature and the stories that I could tell. And that's always, so sitting up here is such an honor. You were saying, how do we turn it into words? I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I wish I did, because then I could do it deliberately. But I was glad that you said Mary Oliver, because when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about Mary Oliver's poems, and that I adore and that I find really meaningful. And I think sometimes, and I think this is why I gravitate towards writing for kids, it's simplicity and honesty. I think you have to be, to write well for children, you have to be unflinchingly honest, and a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely true. I don't know if I'm answering the question.
No, I think that's a truth that a lot of people don't recognize. Every book for children has to have a happy ending, but life often doesn't have happy endings. As quoting one of my great characters, the only ending is death. And that can be happy or not, depending on how you feel about it. But I think we do have to be honest with children about what life is like. And they, I get criticized for unhappy books, but I think books can be a wonderful rehearsal for the ups and downs you're going to have to face in life. And you've rehearsed it. In fact, my younger daughter, when we moved from Maryland, where it was really her only home after we adopted her, to Norfolk, and she said, "I've never had any practice moving." And I thought, yeah, because I had more practice than I ever wanted moving. But you need practice. And if you've practiced death through a beloved character, it breaks your heart in a way, but it's a kind of joyful breaking of the heart, if you know what I mean. But you've been through it. You know what it's kind of like, and when it happens to you, and you have all these funny feelings about it, you know you're not alone.
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the important things also for kids especially is knowing that you're not alone, but that's true for all humans. I mean, just that you're not the first person to feel the feelings, experience the pain, but also experience the joy. I mean, I think over and over, why representation in children's literature is such a critical piece of the stories we tell, is you want children to see themselves and also see the human commonality.
That was much better than my question was. I just want to point that out. That was way
We're just making stuff up.
It was very good. Wonder, it seems to me, is something that, in writing for children, you have the sense of trying to combat the prosaic approach to life that we find a lot around us. A sense that we try to flatten things out and make them utilitarian and make them controllable and maybe unremarkable. How do you, I mean, to me, that's the sense that I get, that in a classroom, perhaps, I'm trying to kind of reignite something that is hard to fight for. Do you get a sense for that in writing?
Well, one of the lucky things is we get to write about whatever we want.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I once wrote a really good article on the history of refrigerators, so it's not always butterflies.
Doesn't mean they'll publish it.
No, Cricket.
Cricket published it.
Cricket published it. They even paid me. Cricket hasn't been paying people lately. So it's not always, flights of the imagination, but on the other hand, if something is boring me, I'm not going to write about it. There's too much good, interesting stuff. I'm going to spend a couple of years on a book, I mean, I can't expect you to be interested if I'm not, and if I'm not,
No.
why am I spending my time? It's a privilege to be able to write for a living, and I'm not going to take it lightly by squandering it on uninteresting things.
No, and another test that I have, I think, is it worth taking 2 years of my ever diminishing span of life? Or somebody told me how many trees had to give their lives for a small edition of a book. And I think, is this going to be worth the life of that many trees? And that stops me. I want what I write to be somehow close to worth the sacrifice of the life of trees.
That's great. It seems to me that if you can find the wonder in a refrigerator, that part of good writing is that you find that not in something that is necessarily remarkable and in your face, but in something that is simple.
And that's the problem with us, our civilization. I think that we think we need more and more of marvel and wonder, and that's going to be ho-hum by tomorrow. And until we see the wonder in a leaf, until that does something to us, we haven't really experienced the depths of wonder, and the wonder that's never going to go stale.
How do we cultivate that sense? And having experienced this in your careers as writers, but also just as human beings, how do you think that we can make ourselves people who encounter wonder at leaves or refrigerators?
Well, I don't know if you've all seen Ted Lasso, but if not, you should. And the best episode of Ted Lasso in season 1, when he's playing darts and says, "Be curious, not judgmental." And I think that's, especially right now in the modern world where all sorts of people are trying to take sides about different things, and I'm on the right side, so you're on the wrong side, no matter what side. Why do people think the way they do? What are they afraid of? What are they moving toward? Why? I was just in this, in Yosemite, they have sequoias that are 3,000 years old trees. How has the world changed while that tree has been growing? Just keep thinking curious thoughts. Look at the world the way you.
And I think poetry is a wonderful teacher to us. I mean, you don't read many lines of Mary Oliver before you have to go outdoors and think about what you're seeing differently. It's sort of like every morning she went out looking for something that would astonish her. And it didn't take much. If you read her poetry, the things that trigger her beautiful words are very simple things usually.
And I know that one of the ways for you to get into literature here was Jared Manley Hopkins when you were a student at King. And the poetry of Hopkins.
Oh, Hopkins. Oh, my gosh. I mean, that... I was speaking yesterday in Nashville, and I had to try out the mic, and I started reciting God's grandeur. And, I mean, because the world is charged with the grandeur of God. Yeah, I mean, he was somebody who saw wonder in everything. And Dr. Winship, I've told the story many times, and I was supposed to choose a writer to write my thesis on, and I couldn't think of anybody. This was 18. I couldn't think of anybody who written anything worthy of that time, and so I mentioned some person, and he said, "You don't want to write about him. You want to write about Gerard Manley Hopkins." I'd never heard of Gerard Manley Hopkins. And the library was underneath where we sit today. So I thought, well, I better find out who Gerard Manley Hopkins was. And I went down to the library. Every story's a long story, I'm sorry. Don't write short stories. You know. But I went to the library and got a copy of the poems. And the first poem I read was The Windhover. And I didn't even know what a windhover was, for heaven's sakes. I read this poem and I thought, I don't want to say a word of it. And why did Dr. Winship think I would want to write about this guy? I can't even understand what he's saying. And I began looking up every word in the dictionary, and I had to look up a lot of them. And it didn't work until I read him out loud. And honestly, the beauty of his language out loud, you understand why it's poetry. It doesn't seem to make sense when you see it on the page. And, you know, he ended up being the poet that I go back to. Fortunately, he died young and wasn't very prolific, so the collected works of like that.
Also a good choice. Cultivating a sense of wonder, then, is something that I want to quote you on. I have this quotation from an article called, is it Dog Day Wonder is the title, I think?
Dog Day Wonder,
Dog
yes.
Day Wonder. So I'm going to quote you. This is from Katherine.
I guess I said it.
Putting you on the spot. Can we get the spotlight right on
Yeah.
that? Okay. I don't even subscribe to that well-worn platitude that children are born with a sense of wonder that becomes dulled in the pursuit of living. Children are born with a wholesome sense of curiosity. I won't argue that, but wonder is more than curiosity. It demands an element of awe, a marveling that takes time and wisdom to supply. And I love this quote, and it seems to me that you're suggesting that this is something that we do cultivate throughout life and that changes. You wrote that a while back. Is there any dimension you want to add to that take?
When Martin told me I'd said that, I thought, yeah, I guess maybe I said that. But, you know, I've been at it for too long, and I don't remember everything I've said. You'd be surprised to know. And I thought about it last night, because you warned me. You might ask me about something I'd said. And I thought, do I still believe that? Well, you know, because I'm going to talk about Rachel Carson tomorrow night and her feeling that children are born with a sense of wonder. And one of the stories I'm telling is about a sense of wonder in one of my grandchildren. But I do think wonder in me is quite different from wonder in me at 3 or 4 or 9. I think it's because of all that I've been given in my life that of course, I hadn't lived long enough to have all of that before. I never met Mary Oliver until I was probably in my 70s or 80s. And so, yes, I think there's certain, you know, everything. One thing I've learned about life is that there are two sides to everything. And you just have to hold these contradictions. And being old is wonderful in that you begin to live with contradictions, that you're always trying to make sense of when you're younger and choose which is right. And now you begin to see there's so much more that is right. And so the people that you totally disagree with, the contradiction, you can't hate because we're the same thing. And does that make any sense at all? So there are many disadvantages. I could walk better, I could hear better, I could see better, and maybe I could think and speak better. But just are given so much with age. And I think I'm just so grateful to have lived to be very old. And it sounds, people are so afraid of being old. And I think, don't be afraid. Just remember everything that's happening now is going to be a treasure to you when you're old. So, and especially the very hard, terrible things that happen to you now, because they begin to knit into the pattern of your life, and you think you're going to die of cancer when you're 40, and yet you look back on that time and all you learned through it, and you're so grateful that you had that experience and began to have to sort out what was important in your life at that stage. Enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aspiring to live a lot longer, but at the same time, I was just this weekend at the wedding of someone I've known since they still wear diapers, one of my son's friends, and a month ago I was at my son's wedding, and of course I've known him since before he wore diapers, and I'm with a bunch of people that I've, all of our children grew up together, and there have been a lot of good times and a lot of really sad times. And it does sort of change, and I don't know, you get a little more grateful for the everyday, I think. And I do think that is something that increases more of a sense of wonder. I mean, I can't be nearly as annoyed about someone's kind of annoying personal habits, and I'm not nearly as worried about whether I look like a fashion model. And I'm much more aware of, the happiness of this little boy that my son was on the Little League All-Stars team with when they were. I mean, you will find that I'm talking to the college students mostly, that eventually people kind of, when you first call them to mind, you don't call them the way they are right now. You call them back from some time in the past. So this man that got married, I still see him as standing next to my son, both of them in their yellow T-shirts with blue all over their faces where they had some kind of popsicle and it was dripping down their shirts, just side by side standing there, these two little blonde kids. And that's always when I think of my son's friend, that's the picture, but that's not how he sees himself now. I mean, he's and just being able to kind of, you ought to get a sense of awe that you're participating in this life. I mean, you ought to, and you can't have that when you're a kid necessarily, but you can start to show kids why they should care about things like that.
I'm struck as we sit in the chapel here at King, there's a kind of theological dimension that matters at King in the fact that everything that we do in Christian worship is mundane. It's bread and wine, it's water, it's a baby in a manger. These are things that are mundane that hold wonder for us. And it seems to me there's a deeply theological resonance in what you're saying with the patterns of Christian theology.
Absolutely. And you're looking at Jesus. All his stories are about ordinary things. And he never despised the very ordinary. He's a wonderful teacher on how to write, in that his stories are open-ended, and the meaning of the story is up to the listener. Barbara Brown Taylor has written a wonderful sermon about the difference between storytelling and preaching. I have the experience of being asked by a publisher she said, you know, Catherine, whenever you write a faith-based book, we'd be happy to print it. And I thought, I didn't say it because my mother really tried to make me more polite than I was. And my thought was, what in the world does she think I've been doing for the last 50 years? I mean, you write out of yourself, and you're revealing yourself, your deepest self. If you want your readers to come to your book from their deepest self, then you have to be willing to expose light and shadow in your own self. And that's what we're called to do, to open ourselves to God who loves us no matter who we are or how we are or what we are, because God made us. And God loves his creation. And we're an essential part of that creation. So unless you're willing to lay out your real self on the page, I don't think there's much hope that the reader's going to do the same for you. I'm not even sure that's an answer to the question.
It was better.
That's probably me preaching again.
Okay.
Not bad. We both talked previous times about how hard writing is and how unglamorous this is. I believe I'm quoting you, Kim, in saying your first draft is, and I quote, trash. Every time you do it.
I would
absolutely.
use stronger language than that most of
You
the time.
probably
Yeah,
do. I was toning it down for these delicate ears. But in the midst of the drafting and the redrafting and the struggling with words, how do you maintain a sense of wonder in the final product? How do you not lose the
Oh, you do lose it. I mean, you lose it, you just try to get it back.
Okay.
I mean, again, like I think I'm probably a worse writer than many writers. I go between 6 and 9 full drafts of my manuscripts, and in one of them, to tell you the scope, in the War I Finally Won, there was a major character that I killed off 2/3 of the way through the book, up to the 6th draft, and then decided we couldn't do that. And so that's actually, we're not talking we're just messing around with little words. We're talking, oh, let's not have them die. Yeah. So it is a slog, but there are always bits that click into place. With that same book, the first ending was trash, but of course, you can't end a book till you know what it's about. But pretty quickly, I got a final ending that was exactly right, and so now we've got something to aim at, if that makes sense. And so, you know, it's just successive approximations. I mean, this scene isn't quite right. Okay, this scene's right, but now it's in the wrong place. Okay, now it's right. What about this one? This one's crap. Let's go. Does that? I don't know. She probably just, you know, gets dictation from God and writes it all.
No. Whenever I hear a writer say that it's just dictated to them, I think, maybe I won't read your book.
Exactly. We don't like you.
I nearly always know where I'm heading.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these adventurous people that just gets in a car and has no idea, because I want to know how to get home for anything. But so I sort of know where I'm heading and then try to work towards that. But I said to I was so blessed. People say lucky, I say blessed. I had the same editor for 40 years. And she never put up with any junk from me. She was perfectly honest, but always supportive. And she always reminded me that I made the mistake of saying to her once how much I loved revising. And I said, it's the only, revisions are the only place in life where you can turn spilt milk into ice cream. And so she would often remind me of that quotation when she was suggesting that I hadn't gotten it quite right yet. And so I really did. And she was such a gifted editor. I asked her once, Virginia, I said, how is it that I send you what I think is a good book, and you write me back 2 single, sometimes 9 single-spaced pages of saying essentially what is wrong with this book? Yes. And I am so excited to get to the typewriter and make it better that I can hardly wait. And I said, why am I not just weeping and screaming and crying that the book I thought was good is very far from good? And she didn't even know what I was talking about when I said, how can you do that? I mean, it was such a gift to her and so natural to her that was just the way she operated.
Well, and also, I mean, you want the best book you can get. And you said before that without the reader, the book isn't anything. And so sometimes what we think we're writing and what the reader is reading are at odds with each other. I had a editor once say, don't you think this character ought to be angry? And I said, this character is angry. She's furious. And she said, don't you think you ought to let us know?
Oh.
Yeah. and was right. And so understanding that, okay, that is not giving the impression I want. It is a gift to have a very good editor who will then, you can find out what's landing and what's not landing and go back and fix the parts that aren't before everybody else reads it, because, it's not, I mean, I like to think that Mary Oliver didn't just sit down and write the whole poem freehand also, that, she went back.
You must be sure of this, yeah.
I would love to see her
rewrote. Wouldn't you like to see that? Yeah.
But, no, it's I had some other thing I was going to say, but I can't remember what it was, so we'll just skip it.
It'll come back.
It'll come back, or not.
It seems to me that one of the greatest wonders in the process of writing or any kind of creative act is the wonder that somebody else sees themselves in this, that somebody else responds to this work.
Yeah, that's the miracle.
It is. Have you got moments of those that stand out?
Well, I'll tell you this story because it's kind of interesting to me. I wrote a book called Halfway to the Sky that was published in 2002, I think. It is still kind of in print on electronic versions. I get like $20 a year now for that. But it was, I was not a big deal writer. It was my 4th book. It's about a girl who runs away to hike the Appalachian Trail. And it sold moderately well, especially in paperback, and it was on some state lists and things, and it was, I'm proud of the book to this day, which is rare. But a couple of years ago, just a few years ago, I started getting letters, and I think I've gotten 5 of them so far, from women who say, I read your book and it changed my life. And they show me, they include pictures of themselves standing on the top of mountains. And they say, this is the hiking I do now. This is what I learned. This is why I went into the woods. And it was completely unexpected.
Yeah.
That wasn't necessarily the message I would have thought readers were getting from that book, but really, I mean, I get these, and when I got the first one, I was amazed. When I got the second one, I was sort of stunned, and then it was kind of a pattern, and I thought, they all waited until they were in their 20s to write to me. They didn't write to me as the kids who first read it and thought, oh, I want to go out and sleep in the woods. And so that does make me think, how much of an influence you can have without having any idea. It was really a gift that they gave me to be able to see this kind of long-term thing. And so now when I write, I'm not just writing for the kid that reads it right now, I'm writing for that kid later.
Well, it reminded me of one of my favorite letters, which I still keep in in the back of my own copy of Bridge to Terabithia from a young woman, grown-up 16-year-old, who said, I have to tell you that when I was 10, Bridge to Terabithia changed my life and saved me. And she said, all my life I knew there was something wrong with me, that I didn't fit into my family. I didn't do what I was supposed to be doing. I wanted things that I shouldn't have as a girl. And then I read Bridge, and the girl was doing boy things and the boy was doing girl things. And I thought, well, it's all right. And she goes on and on. It's 2 pages of type. And she gets to the end of it, and she said, I guess you don't want to hear all this about a book that was written 40 years ago from a queer kid in California. But I had to write you and tell you how much it meant to me and how it's kept me sane all these years. And I thought, did I write that book thinking someday a queer kid from California was going to have it mean so much? No, of course I didn't. I wrote it for myself because I didn't know how to make sense out of a tragedy. And I thought a story has to make sense, so I'll write a story. And yet, to get that kind of response, because she brought her own need and her own life to the book. She got the message she needed. And I wrote to her and I said, this is what makes it wonderful to be a writer, because a reader will bring to the book what their own questions and needs, and find in the book, we pray and hope, what they need for nourishment and help.
That's great. Just a couple of minutes left. I do want to give Kim a moment for an advertisement for something that brings wonder to a lot of children in our area, which is the Appalachian Literacy Initiative.
Yes, please, let's talk about that.
So several years back, I was speaking at the Tennessee State Librarians Conference, and preparing for that talk, looked up a statistic that shocked and upset me, which is if you take all the kids in the United States, public school 4th graders in the United States, and divide them into whether they get free lunch or not, which is the only way of looking at parent income that we have on a nationwide basis. The kids who get free lunch, whose parents who are low income, are 2.5 times less likely to read at proficient level than the kids whose parents are paying $2 a day for a school lunch. And here in Bristol, now the Virginia schools have all just consolidated into one, but we had 4 elementary schools, all of which were above 90%, and 3 of which were above 98% free lunch. And I thought, and the Tennessee side is not quite as low income, but still pretty low income. And of course, a lot of Appalachia is. And I was really, really horrified, and I went home and I complained to all my friends, and one of my good friends, Tracy Griffith, said, I am equally horrified, what are we gonna do? And so we spent about a year figuring out what to do, and then kind of researching, and then we started ALI, which we give books to kids, that's all. One of the biggest differences in terms of low income is that poor kids don't have access to books. Their parents can't buy books, you're not getting books at the Dollar General. Libraries have some pretty significant barriers to access. Kids in foster care can't usually get a library card. The library, when they freeze the Bristol Library now no longer freezes your card if you have, they abolished fines because that's actually pretty punitive to low-income people. But Avery County, North Carolina is a place we're in 4 schools, and they just got wiped out by the hurricane. They have 1 library in the county. It's 30 miles from 2 of the elementary schools that we serve. A lot of the school libraries don't have budgets for new books. So you can't practice reading without something to read. And so, and you have to practice. It's a skill, it takes time. So this year we have 12,000 students in we enroll 74 schools. We enroll 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in schools that are more than 50% free lunch within Appalachia. And 4 times a year we send the teachers a set of 8 books that are all different, nonfiction, graphic novels, all sorts of stuff. The kids look through them and pick the one that they want a copy of for themselves. And then the teacher sends us the order, we ship the books to the kids. So at the end of the school year, the kid has 4 new books that they have chosen themselves, because that actually, for the older kids, makes a big difference in whether or not they read it. And, you know, we have the, you know, the Newbery winners and things, but we also have Bad Guys and Dogman and Captain Underpants, because what we want is for them to read it over and over and over and practice the reading. All I really care about in terms of their reading is that they graduate from high school, because that's going to change their trajectory of their life. And the biggest predictor of whether a kid graduates from high school is whether they can read at 4th grade level at the end of 4th grade. So, yeah, we're super proud of it now. It's become I mean, we have a $500,000 budget this year, and we're in our 7th school year. It was all volunteers until 3 years ago when we got to hire somebody part-time, which was awesome. But the flood is going to be kind of a mess. But we're also working to get in there and do book fairs in Avery County for the entire schools. We actually just got, and one of the people that works with it, one of the people that gives us grants called up and said, we're working with people we trust, we're going to send you money, will you spend it in Avery County? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So thank you, for letting me say that. And it's readappalachia.org, or Read Appalachian. I don't know, there's 2 of them. There's readappalachia.org and readappalachian.org, and they're different, but one of them's us.
And to which of these do we donate? Can we donate online, folks?
Yes, you absolutely can donate online. There is a way to do that. You can donate absolutely any way you choose. You know, checks. I think we have PayPal online, and we have some kind of QR code thing going on. And yeah, I take cash, any of that. I promise we use it responsibly. We're Appalachian. Thank you very much. .org, yes. And AppalachianLit@gmail. So.
Very good. Very briefly, Katherine, can you tell us the title of your new book that comes out in February?
Della and Her Library of Dreams, about a wonderful Jewish woman who was asked to go back to, after she fled Germany under Hitler, was asked to go back to rehabilitate German women and children after all those years of fascism. And her belief was that children's books could make a bridge for peace through the world. And so she began, which is now the largest library collection of books about children and young adults in the world. I think over 40,000 volumes. She also started the International Board of Books for Young People, which has chapters in over 80 countries where people are concerned about not only peace, but children and children having books. And so I'm a very happy member of the IBI, and it has given me the opportunity to make friends around the world.
Okay. Well, in a moment, we'll thank them once again. Let me remind you that straight after this session, you're welcome to come to the library, spend some time with Kim and Katherine. I may live through the session or may not. We'll find out in a minute. Excuse me, at 7 o'clock tonight, Katherine will speak at Emmanuel Episcopal Church. Hope you can join us for that. For the next hour as well, we have the great blessing of Susie Cohen, who is Katherine's agent. And if you want to talk about the book that you think you want to write, here's a chance to do that. She's going to be with us in the library, so look for Susie or look for me if you want to come spend some time talking to her about somebody who is a literary agent and knows that industry very well.
And you have books for sale tonight, right?
And we will have books for sale tonight, and for a small fee, they'll autograph them for you. The fee goes to me. That's the way that works. Anyway, please join me once again in thanking Katherine Paterson and Kimberly Brubaker.
Thank you.